For people who do the most. Well, I will always want the chin-ups and sit-ups because Mike and I had to wake up every morning before breakfast and do 100 sit-ups for sure. Now the chin-ups we just did, once we had to do chin-ups too. But anyway, it wasn't as big a deal. But we had to do 100 sit-ups. Well, you get over years, you get to where you can flat do some sit-ups. So I'm in gym class. I always won. I did my 100, I hadn't done my sit-ups yet, but the year before I won with 100 sit-ups.
And don't forget the kid who worked his way up.
Well, he's coming out. He comes out.
Go ahead.
But he, the year before I did 100, and I was the top dog, so everybody was sitting around waiting on me, and I was telling them I'm getting beat every so much better than we got, better looking too. Anyway, I finally, this one guy, Tommy Tyler, John. Yeah, anyway, John Tyler, he was the third smallest guy in school. I was the smallest. And he was another shrimp, and he said, you can't do that, man. I said, I could do 1,000 sit-ups if I wanted to. And he said, I'll bet you $10 you can't. And boy, down on the floor I went and started doing those sit-ups. And he was counting 1, 2, 3, and the people started counting. And they got up to 151, 152. And then Tyler began to worry about his $10. And he started saying, that one doesn't count. Oh, that one doesn't count. You didn't touch your knee. That one doesn't count. You didn't go all the way to the floor. That sort of thing. And the coach steps in and says, hey, from now on, I'm doing the counting. And all of those counted. And he stood right there and counted all my sit-ups. And when I got to 1,000, I got up and my pants stuck to my rear end because I had no skin on my butt. There were 2 great big stripes of raw skin on my rear end, and I was delirious. But
you did the 1,000.
I did the 1,000 sit-ups, and we get outside. Mike was standing there. Anyway, weren't you standing there?
No.
Oh
yes. I don't remember it.
I was a hero for a while. People all stood around telling me, how wonderful I was. But at the end of the year, each coach was allowed to give out a physical education award, and all the coaches, there were like 5 of them or something, they each gave an award to a football player or a basketball player or a track runner, and then Coach Tisdale, this one coach, gave it to me. The whole crowd, the whole student body was there in an auditorium. They all clapped because the shrimp got that. Anyway, 30 years later, I'm selling cars. And guy, Fred Alford comes in, that's his name. You don't remember his name, do you? Do you remember Fred?
I remember the name, I can't remember who that is.
Anyway, Fred Alford comes in and says, do you remember doing that 1,000 sit-ups? I said, yeah, boy, that was a big deal. I sure am great, And he said, well, what you don't realize is the year before that, he said, we had to do that PT, and I couldn't do but 9 sit-ups. And he said, everybody made fun of me. They wanted me to go sit with Kurt Hopgood, who was a big fat boy, and, everybody got to persecute him. And he said they called me Meatball. And he said, so I went home and I started working on it. And I worked on it, and I worked on it, and I came in loaded for bear. I was going to beat everybody. And he said, I did 350 sit-ups, and no one noticed. I said, I could still beat you.
Help me! Hey, what are you taking photos of? It's stucking! We're stuck! Help! Stucking!
Okay. So, real quick, the build up to the story is that Pat and I were alone in the house. Our parents had gone to a movie, and I don't remember where Jack was. But Pat loved pear juice, and I brought Pat a can of pear juice. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I had peed in that can. And I did not think he would actually drink any of that juice, but apparently he did, because he went in the kitchen and grabbed a big butcher knife and started chasing me through the house. I eventually decided I would sneak out the front door of the house when I got far enough ahead of Pat. I sneaked out the front door of the house. Well, it was sub 30 degree weather. I was in pajama bottoms, and there was frost on the ground. It was freezing cold. I had to climb up in a tree to escape the cold. And I sat in a tree for 2 hours until my parents made it home to rescue me from getting killed by Pat. But for 2 hours, I watched the windows of the house, and I'd see Pat going by the house with a knife. For 2 hours, he never gave up. I had hoped he'd give up. He never gave up. And for one of the few times in our father's history, he was actually pretty gentle on both of us. I guess he felt like we'd both learned our lesson, because he didn't punish us or anything. But I knew I deserved some sort of punishment, because I had pulled a dirty trick and it was bad. But, up until Pat's death, I still couldn't tell this story because Pat would get so mad at me.
I got one right now.
Now we all want to hear it really bad.
I got a couple real quick, real short ones. First of all, my Uncle Jack, he was Grandma Anna's baby. So Uncle Mike and my dad, when they would get to fighting, Papa would let them go at it. Y'all get out there and dudes. But Jap was Anna's baby. So my dad had to fight Jap with open hands, and Jap could have closed hands. And my dad said at the end of those fights, Uncle Jap's face would be swollen and red because he beat the snot out of him with his open hands. Anyway, and then Grandma Anna would come home and lose her damn mind. But anyway, that's Uncle Jap. Yeah, well, that's young Uncle Jap. There's a bunch of more funny ones, but I can't tell those yet. I especially can't tell it in front of Aunt Cindy. But anyway, it's really good. I'll tell Chase. No. All right, but I have one about that. We're moving on. My mother doesn't want me to tell you. I got one. All right. So I had a very dear friend named Willie Ballman that I lost a few years ago. He was a friend since I was 14 and 10 years older than me, like a big brother. And he was always bewildered by my father and the stories. He knew my dad. And sometimes he was perplexed. He's like, why? And other times he's like, that guy's incredible. But one story always stuck with him, and he always maintained. When I told him the story, I've been telling people this my whole life. When I told him, he said, that's it. That's why you are the way you are. And that's your dad's parenting style summed up right there in a tight little. So I was in elementary school. We lived right down the street, 1 block from the elementary school. And this is back in the early 90s when you would let a first grader just, walk 2 blocks down the street in mid-city Baton Rouge, right? I turned out all right, but I wouldn't let mine do it now. But anyway, so, I must have been 2nd, maybe 3rd grade, right? I'm a baby. And been raining all night. I leave to go to school. I cross the street, get a couple houses down, cross a couple puddles, and then I hear the door, and I can recognize it. My dad's getting in his vehicle, and I was a daddy's boy, right? Worship that man. And I remember Uncle Jap saying this. He's like, God dang, Pat's kids, if he told them the sky was green, they'd believe him, And I remember saying that at that reunion. But anyway, so I hear Dad's getting in the car, and I just brighten up like, oh, I'm going to turn around. And I'm going to wait for my daddy as he leaves for work, right? So I turn around, and his car's backing out, and I approach the edge of the street right there, and I never heard that car gun up so fast and move so damn fast. And the vision I have in my memory, I have a clear picture of his face, and it was like this evil, angry monster. The reality I know is probably different, but anyway, he comes gunning by me as fast as he can. He hits that puddle and soaks the shit out of me. Soaking wet. I start crying, losing my mind. I go home. My mom has to tear me out of my wet clothes. Oh, why is Daddy mad at me? Why is he mad at me? She said, he's not mad at you, baby. And she gets me to school. I spend the whole day at school miserable. I get home. Dad's still not home. I'm miserable, pouting in my room and all that. I hear he gets home, and I know Mom must tell him something. Next thing I know, he comes in, he opens that door, and he has that smirk on his face that you see in a lot of those pictures over there, and I'm like that. He comes, he sits next to me. I said, why were you mad at me? He said, I wasn't mad at you, boy. But when one of your buddies is standing in front of Puddle, you gotta soak his ass. Anyway, and of course it took a couple more years for him to help me understand that strangers don't count in that logic. Like every time we saw a stranger on the road, I'm like, get him, Dad, get him. He's like, that ain't no friend of ours, we can't soak him. But I think the point Willie, and Willie said that to me years ago, that was profound to him, and I've had years to think about it, and I don't think he's wrong. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And luckily for me, I had the disposition, I could recover from that, because that's wild, right? I mean, he soaked the shit out of me in second grade and then went to work. And he, by the way, he would, if he was here, he'd tell you, he spent the whole day telling all his lawyer buddies what an awesome thing he did that day. The secretaries wouldn't talk to him for a week. They all wanted him to go to school. He's like, I ain't going to school, that boy will be fine. Anyway, and I was. But I think the point is, don't take yourself too seriously. And most importantly, if you make the decision to stand in front of that puddle, you got what's coming to you. You can't blame anyone else for it, right? Anyway.
I just wanted to say something that was on my mind a lot these last few days that isn't necessarily a funny story or anything. But Pat was a high school dropout, but then got a bachelor's degree, master's degree, Ph.D. I'm not sure he actually got the diploma on the Ph.D. and a Juris Doctorate. But what we're also talking about is a guy that was a twice convicted felon. He was convicted of possession of marijuana when it was a felony. And then when they changed the laws, he was convicted of LSD when it was a felony. He had to get pardoned by the governor in order to go to law school and become an attorney.
Louisiana State Supreme Court. He showed me the case in the legal book in his office. He was very
Wow.
Went all the way up.
Wow.
And he told me,
And so we're all shocked and horrified by the way Pat died. But I just want to point out, in hindsight, you can kind of see, well, it's not that surprising that Pat would end in a splash like that.
I'm good with that. I don't know if some of these ladies
yeah. But anyway, at least that's my take on it. It's not that big a surprise that he would go in the flame of tension. I mean, it's just amazing that Pat would end the way he did.
Well,
Okay.
I'm just going to, now I'm not really telling a story, but that pardon, because I want to,
Okay.
She knows.
that pardon, no, y'all can go away, that pardon
I don't know. I can't.
was done by Cindy Dooley's uncle. Bobby Williams did that for Pat to game. So it all stayed
Uncle
in the
Bobby?
it all stayed in the family.
Uncle Bobby did that.
Woo! And a lot of the stories I've never heard, even still. And when somebody gets up and tells, at least my children, when they get up and tell some of the stuff that went on, it gets rough on mamas, right? Anyway, this is another John Gisham thing. There was a class at LSU, because Pat graduated, his undergraduate degree was in English Lit. And there was a class at Ole Miss that I think had like 6 students. You had to submit writing to gain admittance to this class. And he thought, well, that'll be fun, So he did. He wrote something and he got in the class, and it was taught by John Gisham, who had already published a bunch of stuff. Anyway, I was always kind of proud of him for that piece.
Okay, so I'm a poke. I'm not a Dooley. That means I don't tell stories like you guys do. No one can tell a story like the Dooleys. So I'm not even going to try to be funny. What I'm going to do is just tell you how my heart is warm for the Dooleys and the whole family. And all the things we did together, going to the farm in Clinton, or, just in that store and everything. When I got to go see Mike and Pat and Jap, it was always such an adventure. I mean, I had a great childhood and wonderful family and all that, but going to the Dooley's house was like going into a novel. It was just amazing. So anyway, Pat, love you, guy.
We had one in Memphis with Walter. Walter had a buddy. I was 14, and Walter was 12 or 12, I think. And he had a buddy who, a big kid, but I was about, I may not have been as big, but I was a lot more physically capable. I was 14, and this kid had a broken leg. I think I could tell you it was easy. Yeah. So what happened, here's this kid with a broken leg, and he and I had some words. And I finally said something. I don't know what happened, but I finally decked him. And I put one on him. You know, I ran back like Mickey Mantle and pow, hit that kid. And he sat down on the ground, and then he got back up. And Papa was at the window in the kitchen and said, "But you gotta hit him again before he gets you." I mean, he was a big kid. And so, pow, I hit him again. And he sat down again. And then he got back up. And with Papa standing in the window saying, "Hit him in the ear. You know, get him in the gut. Yeah, you better not let him get up." You know, that sort of thing. And of course, I knew that if I didn't do this, I was going to get murdered. But by the same token, this kid had a head like concrete. Everything, nothing I did to him bothered him. And so I pounded on him until somebody finally, somebody with a conscience came along and stopped the fight. Well, a year later, I was still a little bitty guy. And we went up to visit Walter, visit the Poles. And Walter and I are riding down the street on bicycles. And up comes this kid. He's now much bigger, and he doesn't have a broken leg. And Walter said, "Hey, what's his cousin Paul, that guy you had a fight with last year?" I'm sitting there, and the kid looks over at me. He didn't do anything, but he and Walter are still big buddies. I love that kid.
I probably remember his name.
I don't know his name.
You never screw up a good story with the truth, right? So you remember the story about Pat and my buddy Glenn, that with the broken leg and the cast on, that he popped and Glenn fell, and he popped and Glenn fell, and he made it sound like Glenn never had a chance. Well, let me tell you, Glenn got into a lot of fights in his youth through high school, and he finished every one of them. He might have hit the ground once, but he was up, and he was one of these would drop his head and slug. He had a hard head, and he had mitts, for things. So it ended up being a draw. I think his cast had he had one of those walking casts with a little lump thing on the bottom. Well, it fell off. But anyway, it ended up being a draw. But once again, Glenn could have not cared about Pat. The next year we saw that's when I said, "Hey, Pat, that's Glenn. Remember that guy?" Anyway.
You're an instigator, Dad.
All right, I got one funny story about Uncle Pat. But first, I just want to say he was. Don't do a disclaimer. Yeah, do it. Don't do a disclaimer. Okay, no disclaimer. Just say it. Well, first I'm going to do the sentimental, mushy gushy stuff. Uncle Pat was a big part of our lives growing up. He was a super fun uncle. He helped me out a lot of times in my life. Kate told me a story recently which was really brought home how he would help you. He was really a good guy in that way, and I'll miss him. The obituary that I guess Megan wrote was so good. So I just wanted to say that was excellent. And the pictures on the slideshow and everything are really great, so thanks everybody. Okay, so the funny story about Uncle Pat. Well, first of all, just preface this. Growing up, I would love to go over to Uncle Pat's house, but my mom would always warn me, Uncle Pat and his boys are wild, so just be careful. And actually my first encounter with the police was with Larkin and Colin when we were, 10 or something. You could tell that story, but the funny story with Uncle Pat, I was in high school, and we were, I think the statute of limitations has run out, but we were looking for some pot, okay? We were high schoolers, driving around town, and we were trying to find some pot back in the days when that was not easy to do. So going from house to house with these guys that I didn't know all that well, And they're like, oh man, we can't find anything tonight. Let's try this. I got one more place I can try. And so we're driving around Baton Rouge. We start to get toward Mid-City, and I said out loud, I was like, yeah, I know this area a little bit. I'm like, okay, keep driving. We get closer to this certain part of town. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually know this part of town pretty well. Like my uncle lives over here. And they're like, okay. We pull into my uncle's street, Uncle Pat's street. And I was like, wow, this is my uncle's street. Like, what a crazy coincidence. And then it's right off of the corner of Government. Pull into the driveway, and I'm like, this is my uncle's house. Everybody in their car turns around and looks at me like, what? We walk into the house, there's Uncle Pat in the living room. He's like, hey, Jake, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't really know what's going on right now. And we go to the back. There's a friend of Larkin's there in those days, Drew. And I was like, I was still like in shock, I think. I was like so stunned by this whole situation. And I was like, wow, are you going to sell some pot? This is my uncle's house. And Drew goes, this is my house. Uncle Pat was totally cool with the whole, he was just like, whatever, yeah, see you later. I'll say the other thing I loved about Uncle Pat is he loved animals. That was a big influence, I think, growing up. You know, all the Dooley brothers seem to love animals. So I always appreciated Uncle Pat's dogs, especially Magic. If anybody has some Magic stories, I'd love to hear those. I'll tell the other story really quick about getting in trouble with the police as 10-year-olds. I got the standard lecture from Mom leaving the house. You're going to Uncle Pat's house. I know it's going to be no holds barred, so just be crazy. Be sensible. Use your judgment. I'm like, okay, Mom. Go to Larkin's place. Larkin and Colin are like, hey, we found this cool new place to hang out. Come check it out, okay? We go and get into the sewer. We climb into the sewer. We're climbing around in the pipes. There's these big drainage culverts in Mid-City Baton Rouge. We're climbing around. I thought this was the most awesome thing. We're like the Ninja Turtles. Somebody called the cops on us, and they pulled us out of the sewer and took us back to Uncle Pat's. And so then my mom got the call that we had been brought in by the police. All right. When we were in Clinton, we had what we called an electric worm digger. And all it was a rod that was connected by wire to a plug-in in the house. And you would push this rod into the ground and it would electrify the worms in the ground, and the worms would come crawling up to the surface and you could pick the worms up. So you could, with this electric worm digger, you could get worms. Well, Uncle Mike is closely related to this story. It's his fault. So we have the electric worm digger in the backyard, and there must have been some electrical malfunction because it wasn't working. And the other kids, I wouldn't touch the damn thing. It was dangerous. I was one of the older kids. Andy was there too. You probably didn't touch it either.
I was there, but I don't remember whether I touched it or not.
Well, I didn't want to touch it. But Uncle Mike noticed that I wasn't touching it. And the rest of the kids got tired of playing with the electric worm digger. It wasn't doing anything. And Uncle Mike gets me up there on the porch, and he starts ragging on me about what a chicken I was, that I was scared to touch that electric worm digger. And how old was I, 7 or 8 or something like that?
You were in diapers.
No, I wasn't in diapers. But anyway, so okay. My uncle wants me to be a man about this, so I'm going to go grab that electric worm digger. I went out there and I grabbed that electric worm digger, and but now the electricity worked. So I grabbed that digger and I couldn't let go. It was shocking me, and Andy remembers that I was flying around.
Let me stop. He was going 20 feet. And he couldn't let go of it.
That's right.
And it flew him all over the yard.
You were running and jumping and screaming. And you couldn't let go.
I couldn't let go. Uncle Mike and our housekeeper were on the porch, and they're fighting to go unplug the wire, but they couldn't both get through the doorway at the same time. And either she or you reached down and just grabbed and pulled it out and saved me. But
I
look,
swear to God, he went up in there and he come down and He couldn't let go. He
Look,
threw him all over the
imagine how much smarter I could be today if that had never happened.
Neil almost killed me when he found out. He came home that night. He found out what happened. He was furious. So,
I will go ahead and say the other country thing that we would do would be the slaughtering of the chickens. Papa had a cane knife and a stump. And this is, I guess this is pretty bad. But anyway, he'd cut the head off, but we had our chicken killing clothes on. Mike, were you ever part of that?
yeah, I was.
Yeah. Well, we had our chicken killing clothes on, and Papa would chop off a chicken's head, and that chicken carcass would run about 50 feet, and we kids, we'd be running out there beside that chicken with blood flying all over us and everything, and that was how we killed chickens.
All right, guys. So I'm Cass, I'm Pat's niece, and I don't have a great Dooley story that's going to have everybody rolling. I'm just going to tell you guys some words from the heart here, and I might get choked up, but y'all probably all need a good cry anyway, so. Uncle Pat was a good uncle, just like Jake said. I can think of so many instances. I can remember, when this happened, when we learned of his death, just flood of memories coming through of my whole lifetime. But I remember him taking us, and I say all of the kids, all of the cousins, right? So we moved back to Baton Rouge when I was 5. And so me, Kate, and Jake, Larkin, Colin, Meg, all kind of grew up together, did the holidays together. And I remember Uncle Pat taking us all to Fun Fair Park one night. I must have been 6 of us possibly. I think he was the only adult. Something I wouldn't try by myself. But he took us all to Fun Fair Park. We had a blast. And I got to sit in the front seat with him. And I would try to get information from him because that story that Dad told about them fighting and Dad being up in the tree, that was my all-time favorite childhood bedtime story. I loved hearing it. And so when I could get Uncle Pat alone, I would try to find out what was his side of the story, how he told that story. And he's the one that taught me, he taught me the phrase, don't spill the beans, Cass. Because he would, he'd confide some things in me and then he would tell me, now don't tell anybody about this. So I also remember another time when we went as a group with Papa and Uncle Pat. I don't think my parents were there, but we went to go see a gymnastics meet at LSU. And we went to Louis. Allison was there. The cousins were there. We went to Louis for breakfast. And then on the way to LSU, we stopped at a garage sale. And I wasn't feeling that good. And I promptly vomited all over the driveway where the garage sale was happening. And I was probably Aubrey's age, like 8. And Uncle Pat, went and got the hose and hosed off their driveway for them and apologized to the owners. And it was no big deal. In Memphis, I remember I think we had a reunion sometime between 1995 reunion and the 2017 reunion, maybe in the early 2000s. And I convinced Uncle Pat, he wasn't completely into this, but I convinced him to take us all down to Beale Street to party. I think Colin was there. I can't remember who of us were there, but we convinced him. And I told him, look, I'll drive home. I'll be the designated driver. I'll drive home. And you drive us there. And it was something about getting the vehicle was tricky. And we needed to have a real adult with us. Even though, we were adults, but we were young. And so he agreed to it. I made the deal with him. And then as soon as I got to Beale Street, I got a drink. And it wasn't just a little drink. It was a big drink. And so I caved in and, we were drinking and we were dancing and we were having a great time. And he's just like, you said you were going to be the designated driver. So he did put up with that and he did drive us home after all. So he wasn't too hard on me about breaking my commitment to drive us home. He was a jack of all trades. He was available for free attorney advice when I was, when I had a non-compete contract and I was afraid I would get in trouble with my previous employer if I started my own business. He was there for me. He had many useful things to sell at his flea market shop in Florida. I have a taser that I carry to this day in my purse to fend off mean dogs and strangers when I take walks. Not too long ago, I had a sloppy painting job done at my house that I had to deal with the contractor about. And through Dad, I got advice about how to figure it out, how to work it out with this contractor. Uncle Pat really enjoyed being a dad. And I think that's one of those good things that came from Papa, that all of his sons really love being dads. And they've been hands-on dads. And I'm so proud of all of Jap and Dad and Pat, Uncle Pat. Uncle Pat told, not many people were honest with me about how hard parenting was going to be. But he was. He told me, one of my favorite memorable pieces of parenting advice, he told me it takes 2 people full time to take care of a baby. And I thought about it, at the time it seemed, well, that seems excessive, 2 people, But I learned it was true. It really is true. So I was really happy when we got that little clip of him bouncing Aubrey on his knee at the family reunion, because I saw that great father in him, grandfather, and I enjoyed that. So I haven't had a chance hadn't spoken to him in some years, but have always been so happy to see how his family's been growing and these beautiful grandchildren, beautiful, healthy grandchildren. He was a loving and patient and gentle person, actually. I mean, sometimes you hear his stories, he sounds so rough and tough and kind of mean, but he really was loving and patient and gentle. He did an amazing job taking care of Grandma Anna. Even when she was having a lot of trouble with dementia, she would call me and tell me, I'm so hungry, I haven't eaten, I can't find anything to eat around here, and this man he's not even taking care of me. And then eventually we'd get Uncle Pat on the phone and he'd say, we just came back from Piccadilly. She just had a good meal. So he was constantly dealing with that, with the family. She would call people and then we would get scared and worried, and then we would be making him answer to us, like, is she okay? So even though he had this tough exterior, he really was a sensitive and big-hearted person, caring and nurturing, and he could love big. Now he could also get hurt big, and I learned that about him. So my handsome, wild, funny, lively, and energetic uncle, he wasn't pushy. He was supportive. He wasn't afraid to say the truth. He could explain things clearly, and he could cut straight to the crux of the issue. He was tolerant. I'm glad to have had him in my life, to have known and loved him as an uncle and a friend, and I will miss him. Thanks, guys.
Hi.
They're telling jokes.
Hi.
Telling jokes, and Aunt Sally's telling jokes too.
Hi.
I had a friend who had a falling out. I grew up with this girl, Colin and I. Her name's Maggie. And my dad would always tell us too, like he'd always say, that girl, she's going to be your friend for life because she's the type of person that just keeps people together. And she still is, right? When we moved out of the house, got onto a boat and left for Florida, Maggie rented the house, right? Paying Dad rent. And Dad, at some point, Dad sold the house, kind of surprised her, put her in a bind, and he didn't give her he owed her a lot of money. Didn't give her deposit back, stuff like that. And they had a falling out. And it even involved money, right? And a few years went by, and one day she's working at Whole Foods. She was in the produce section, and she said, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something, and there's my dad just beelining it straight for her. And he comes over, he grabs her apron, and he pulls a wad of cash out and shoves it in her apron and says, I'm sorry, Maggie. And he turned and walked away. And ever since then, she said, your dad is right by me. That is a good dude. It was obvious to her in that moment that it had been tearing him up. And I'm telling you, I know my dad, and if he had harbored any ill will towards you, he would have been saying a bunch of really nasty things about you to me, because he loved to just like, he knows he had never had a negative word to say. I guarantee you he was holding on to some hope of making it right with you. He just didn't know how, because he was bad at that. But anyway, yeah.
We're going to talk about the other generation before all of this happened.
Okay, let me say this one real quick.
Yep.
This has to do with the end of Pat's 2-year duty with Mama. Pat spent 2 years of his life when he could have been an attorney or anything else, but he spent 2 years taking care of Mama, and I was very grateful for that. But the thing that happened, this is when Mama kept getting out of the house and against his wishes and wandering the neighborhood and falling down, and some stranger would have to help her get up and get her back to the house and all this. So it was a problem, Mama being lost and everything. Pat decided to get more forceful with Mama about not letting her leave the house. And a neighbor saw Mama trying to leave the house and Pat pushing her back into the house, and the neighbor called the cops. So now Kate, this involves you because you rescued Pat on this.
I'm coming.
Okay. But the way Pat told the story was that several cop cars came to the house and they called me. Kate was a social worker. So
I still am.
okay. And we knew that because of her credentials, she could vouch for Pat. But Pat says the cops had him cuff-linked to the bumper of the cop car, sitting on the concrete, and that Mama was standing there beside the car saying, "He beats me, he beats me." And so it took Kate to show up at the house and rescue Pat.
Yeah. So I did talk to the police and I explained the situation as nicely as I could. And I think in the last reunion, I said he wasn't in a cop car, but I believe I lied and he was. So I'm just kind of coming clean and saying he was really in a police officer car and chained, and I got him.
You got him out?
I got him out, and then I took Grandma home.
Didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
To the place that I was living at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't know, if you looked at Pat, you might have called him disreputable a little bit. All you say is he was fun, anything goes. He would let you do anything in the world you wanted to do. He never worried about the consequences. He did not have, what's the word? His reputation was not strong. I don't know, his reputation, I want to say this is why I'm talking, because Cass got up here and talked about the kind and the good, he felt deeply, but you didn't realize it because he just said anything goes. I remember a statement, I cannot say the words exactly, but this was after Mother moved in with him, his mother, and she was always running away and he was always not doing what I would have done maybe. But when she moved in, I remember he said to me, people will think I'm doing something good now. And I remember that all my life. He really cared. He meant everything to Anna.
He did a lot of good things.
I want to talk about, before Chat was here, I want to talk about the family. And I talk about my two sisters and my two brother-in-laws. And I had the two best brother-in-laws that man ever could find. They were like big brothers to me. Neil Dooley, if you guys would have known Neil when he was young, he was big and strong and he was always diving. And if you went to Ole Miss, he was at the swimming pool and he could do it. He was on the high diving board and he was doing flips and everything. And I think he ended up winning the Southeast Championship of diving when he was at Ole Miss. And he and Ann were very much in love. And I just remember I idolized Neil. And he was always at the gym, and he was well known at Ole Miss, and all the football players and everything, and Arnie Poole and the Poole boys, way before your generation. These were all Americans, and they would come down to our house, and Neil and Ann, and then Sally met Woody, and Woody was the greatest guy you could ever imagine. He was like a father. I had two brother-in-laws that were like fathers to me. And when I get in trouble with my father, they would be there to protect me. I mean, they were there constantly. And I just think of how Ann and Sally, they met the two best guys you could ever imagine in those days. And I remember Woody coming back, and it was right after World War II. And Woody had been shot down in Russia, right? And he had come back, and he had been missing. And his parents didn't know he was alive or whatever. And then Neil was in the Army. And I just think I idolized both of them. And they were hard workers. And I can remember, Neil was the specimen of a man. And so was Woody. And I wish you guys would have known where you came from. You came from unbelievable stock. So anyway, good luck. Keep the focus and everybody do it.
I just want to say the only time in my life, and it just happened for the first time recently. That's probably the third time that someone said something positive about Papa, and I really like it. And I think some of it, and I believe him 100%. His perspective was different than my dad's, but they and Uncle Mike's, you guys turned it into a joke, right? So y'all leaned into the negative side. But when he says that, it's like little memories pop up about the positive things he said about Neil. Like he did have, and let's all face it, Grandma Anna, we did call her the Terminator when we were kids, right? So she has some stuff with her too. So this one's about you, my dad, and my sister. So a few years back, quite a few now, an ex-girlfriend and her family threw me a graduation party at their beach house in Florida, and they called it Dooley Day. And at the time, she and I were real smitten with each other, and the idea was we were going to have Dooley Day every year. Well, we only had the one, but and you'll see why. So, oh man, that was a wild day. That was a lot of fun. But anyway. They had this big, beautiful house on the beach. They do all the decoration. I mean, lots of planning, lots of people. And then my whole family's invited. Uncle Mike comes, Mom comes, Jarrod, Meg, everyone. Aunt Julie came. Grandma Anna and Dad come, although late. And that's kind of a side story, too, because he was about to ruin that party because he was so pissed because he could not find a place. And when he stopped and asked random people on the road, they couldn't tell him where the damn house was. And that would always piss him off, right? And I always go, Dad, like, what street were you on? He's like, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm on the phone with him out at the dang highway, waiting for him to get there, like to run interference so he doesn't just storm in there and just to everybody. But we got him in there. Grandma Anna is, awkward. I don't know. I'm trying to think. It was awkward. And she's sitting out at the end of a dock with a bunch of other people on the water, and everybody's playing, and Dad's there, and he's very disheveled. It's all awkward, right? But I have another story later out there. But it's a similar situation where he just starts to kind of loosen up, right? And at some point, Dad and Uncle Mike look over and see that they got a trampoline in their yard. And anyway, and we've at family reunions, does anyone remember what would happen if we go to the swimming pool at that family reunion, and how the two of them would compete on, and Uncle Jap too, who could shave their nose on that diving board, flipping around. The lifeguards would jump up and whistle. Women would scream. Well, they start jumping, and if you don't know this about guys who grew up diving and training on trampolines, they're able to get insane height. I mean, they something about the timing of their bodies, I don't know, but they get that trampoline touching grass and then zoo up in the air, and they just go and go. And they started taking turns doing this favorite trick from their childhood. They call it a suicide, right? So what they do is they get to the apex of their ability and height, and then they invert with their hands by their sides like that, like a plank, and they go down head first. And right before they hit, every woman within sight screams bloody murder. And then, but they have this little trick where they roll their head like that, and they come right back up on their feet, right? And both of them come back up like smiling. So, but they're hammering this just little commercial.
I would point my toes.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, Uncle Mike always pointed his toes. Yeah, he has good form. He's a diver. But so Meg, the cheerleader gymnast, we're all loose, okay? We're having a great time. And she gets excited. She knows how to do a bunch of stuff on the trampoline, flip around, do stuff. So she gets out there and starts jumping and destroys the trampoline, completely ruins it, crumbles that son of a bitch. We had to put it in the dumpster. And everyone the rest of the time was like, Meg, you destroyed it. She's like, those old men destroyed it. I just did one round of flip-flop. Anyway, that's it. The Dooley's always trying to freak people out.
No, it reminded me when Uncle Mike talked about the extended family that I want to tell the one about Mama and Papa asleep on the floor in front of the television, and they had lost track of the fact that I was also in the room, in the back part of the room. So the room was dark, late at night. Mom and Papa are kind of in a spoon position on the floor in front of the television. And just the most faint sound from Papa was the very beginning of a snore. It was a... And when that happened, Mama tore into him with both fists and both feet, and she tore into him, and he started waking up, and Mama settled down, and he said, what? And Mama said, Neil, you were snoring. And then they found out I was in the room. All right, I'm saying something for Aunt Sally.
What I've heard Anna say over and over at the end was that he just loved his children so much he wanted to be with them all the time. I'm looking at you looking up there talking.
Yeah. Aunt Sally's reminding us that Mama, and let me say this, after Mama and Papa divorced, Mama didn't have many kind words for Papa, but she did always recognize that he loved kids. He loved interacting with kids, and she always admitted also that he was a great conversationalist, which is what Papa was, and by the way, what Jap was too. Great. Oh, okay. So talking about Pat. Pat enjoyed his kids. Okay.
I guess y'all realize that, but she would talk about no matter what happened, how much he enjoyed. He loved the three of y'all. Did you pick up on that?
That was good.
Say it. Were you able? You heard what she said.
She's emphasizing how good Pat was with his kids and all kids.
It's what Anna remembers.
So it was for my first or second birthday. Purple Pat, he got me a gift, and everyone thought it was a hamster. And when we opened it up, it was a white rat. And we asked him why, and he said they were out of hamsters at the store.
Which we think the white rat snake food was a bit cheaper, right? That's probably why you got it. Yeah. So the white rat, June was so excited about it, and Pawpaw Pat was so thrilled. She loved it. So that night when Pawpaw Pat goes home, I take the rat to set him free in the woods, and he's albino white. And I set him out, and he looks around like this, and I don't let June come with me. And I get back to the house, and June says, "Do you think he's gonna make it?" And I said, "He's already done."
So the first story I have about Pat is I used to send the kids. Oh God, no, I'm gonna get to you.
I'll tell mine.
I'll tell mine.
So like, I guess it was probably a year after my dad died that we went down to Louisiana to go see everybody, do all that. And we want to go stay at Uncle Pat's. We want to go hang out with Larkin and Colin. I don't know where Maggie and Meg were, but we want to go see our cousin. It'll be fine. Mom is terrified at the proposition. It's like, no, you're not staying there. We beg, we plead, we go back and forth. Okay, I'll let you go with the Jake disclaimer. It's going to be wild. Make your best decisions. Whatever. So we go over there, and within just a little bit, Uncle Pat had dug a pond out back. They've been force feeding some catfish, and the Maryland Dooleys are in town
So we're going to eat this thing. So they drag it out of the water. The way I remember, they let one of us bludgeon it to death. They fry it up in the kitchen. We're then given like a case of... Uncle Pat drives to the liquor store, gets us beer. There might have been some other stuff that we had at the time too. My brother is, at the end of the night, just very sick and doing... Basically, it was mom's worst nightmare. And then to cap it off, he gave us a tape that was labeled Caligula. For some of you might know what that is. If not, Google it. But still, to this day, is one of my fondest memories. Me and my brother talk about it all the time. And it was her worst nightmare and my best dream. It was the most fun ever. It was awesome.
Well, the other is they would go to Mike's house in the summer for a week, all the cousins. And so I sent the kids always with trepidation. And Maggie comes home, or they all came home one time, and Maggie's walking down the hall in her house, and I see this Tramp stamp. I'm like, what the hell? Where did that come from? Well, it turns out Kate's friend, husband, ex-husband, ex, yes, had taken Maggie and gotten this Tramp. All right, whatever. So she has this, and when Pat found out, he called her white trash, and then he said, "Your mother already hates me. She will never let you come back down here again." Like, no, it's Uncle Pat, but...
We told Uncle Pat before it happened.
Oh, I never heard that part.
So we literally said, we're going to a tattoo shop right now. And we went.
Never heard that part of it. But the other one I will say is one time after Patrick was born, there had been a bank robbery near our house. And Pat came to the house because Jeff traveled a lot back then. So I was by myself in the house. And Pat came and is everybody okay? And he sat and he stayed with me and Patrick until they rounded up this bank robber. And then he left. And that was just very sweet. Yes.
All right, Megan was a baby in arms. This was at a point in time where you went to Blockbuster to rent movies, right? And so we decided we needed a new pile of movies, gathered up the stuff we had. I put them in a car, took Megan with me, not sure why, but took Megan with me to drive to Blockbuster. And I'm in Blockbuster and I'm wandering the aisles and I'm trying to decide what movies and what movies. And then, oh, I know what, she fell asleep in the car. It's the only time I ever did this. I'm right at the front of the store and I left her in the car, asleep with the car running. And I'm in Blockbuster looking for a couple of movies. And this man that ran the store, he's looking around, and he's walking around, and he keeps passing me up, and he said, "What are you, Inga Dooley?" And I said, "Yes." Amy said, "Well, you're supposed to have a baby in your arms." And I said, "Oh, what happened?" Well, Pat had to call the store to find Inga to tell her to come home. I think maybe we only had the one car, I'm not sure, to come home because Colin had fallen out of the tree. This is when Colin fell out of the tree. No, y'all were already, I think, on your way to the hospital. The hospital was 2 blocks away. They were building a tree house and things weren't secured. Go figure. Things weren't secured. And Colin steps on something and it flips and he fell like 12 feet. Oh my God. And yeah, on a piece of plywood. And of course I go running in the hospital, but now I have my baby in my arms. I go running in the hospital. And anyway, the rest is history. He was fine. Everything was okay. But it was all...
the next day out of the same tree, by the way, and they went back to the hospital. It was Colin's fault. He also fell out of the attic. He seems to fall. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but you also hatcheted him one time. You got the hatchet because Pat was in charge of y'all.
All 3 times.
Okay, I have one more. We were living out. Yeah, Pat was in charge. We were living out Barringer Foreman Road, and Pat was a 2-story house, and Pat was painting it. So it was time to get up and paint
the chimney. It would be like painting that chimney up there. He was babysitting Larkin. And then you were little.
Like Jack's age.
Yeah, Megan wasn't even on the earth yet. And Colin, I think, was a baby. And so I come home from wherever, and I'm looking for him, and I go in the backyard. I'm hollering, Pat, Pat. He said, oh, I'm up here. I said, well, where's Larkin? He said, oh, he's up here. And I said, what? Oh, yeah. So he had tied a rope around himself and tied it around Larkin and had Larkin on the 2-story roof. Well, he said, I just needed to get it done. He's loving it. He's having a great time. Yeah. I said, if he falls, he will drag you. Anyway, they got down off the roof.
Yeah, when he was climbing up, he stopped at some point and he felt something hitting him in the butt. And I was right below him coming up, and he said, well, I guess I'll take the rest of the way.
I did remember a story I could share. It was, there was a period where Uncle Mike Majors, Mike Dooley, and I kind of got involved with this kind of air serve thing where Mike Dooley was doing the work and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we had gone to, was it Pensacola? Anyway, Florida, where to have a corporate meeting or whatever. Pat was living on this, what I thought was a beautiful sailboat. And so we all decided to go out on the sailboat, right? So Uncle Mike and Mike Dooley and I and Pat are on the sailboat, and we're going out, and you know, he goes out of the bay and he's using the motor the whole time, and I'm starting to wonder if he ever used the sails on those boats, because I was looking at him, there's wires and cords everywhere, and I said, Pat, what is this? You know, I'm interested. Where does this thing go? And he goes, I don't know, pull it and see. You know, so anyway, we go motoring out. Like I said, we never put the sails up, and after a while we come back, well, we get stuck. And so he just turns off the motor, and we all go downstairs, and we're watching Smallville, the you know, Superman thing. And I'm saying, yeah. And so I'm saying, Pat, what do we do? And he said, well, don't worry about it. When the, I guess, tide comes in, we'll be all right. And he said, it'll be about the end of Smallville. And he was right. About the end of Smallville, we were floating again, and then he motored us back in. But anyway, I swear it was a beautiful boat, but I don't think he ever used the sails anyway.
He didn't know what he was doing at all.
Yeah. All right, so I want to talk about Uncle Pat and animals. I hope somebody will come up and tell some stories about magic, because I just felt like there was some kind of spiritual thing with Uncle Pat and magic. That dog was like the perfect companion for a larger-than-life person to have a larger-than-life dog. I remember Magic fell off a boat one time and was presumed dead for like a month or something, and then came back to... Anyways, I don't know all the magic stories, but... Okay, you tell the magic story later. And so as a little kid, you know, the little kids love animals. We go to Uncle Pat's house. Uncle Pat's got gerbils, and he's got all these gerbil runs. He was so creative, you know, he's constructed all these gerbil runs. His gerbils running all over. Wow, this is amazing. This is so cool. Next weekend, hey, Dad, take me back to see Uncle Pat. I want to see all these gerbils again. They're all dead. All the gerbils are dead. And that happened multiple times. I might be exaggerating a little bit. Maybe it wasn't 1 week. Not exaggerating, he says. Or it was a rabbit. Whoa, cool rabbits. You pet the rabbits, so cute. Dad, take me back to see them. Those rabbits they're gone. There's no rabbits. There was an alligator. I don't remember all the animals, but it was always like tons of fun to go over there. And then the other thing was the snake. I don't know if you remember the snake at the camp. So Dad had this camp, and we would hang out at the camp. It's like on the river, and you could hike down to the river from the camp. It was a real fun time. One time there's a big snake under the house. And I don't remember, so I always had this, Uncle Pat had like a Cosmo Kramer kind of energy sometimes, so you guys know Kramer from Seinfeld. Whoa, that stuff, you know, come through the door like this. Well, we're all sitting in the car, you know, we see this huge snake. My father is like, get away from that snake. We get in the car, we're watching Uncle Pat. I don't remember what the plan was, but he decides to go interact with this big snake. Right? And Dad goes, that's a diamondback rattlesnake. This must have been 6 feet long, this huge snake crawling up under the house. Uncle Pat goes up there. I could just kind of see the top of Uncle Pat over the brush and stuff. He goes to get the snake. I don't grab it by the tail or try to wrap it up with a branch or something. And the snake decides to turn around and come at him. And Uncle Pat's doing all this stuff through the yard, you know, dancing away from this snake and stuff. And I look at Dad, and Dad's just doing like this. All right, I hope somebody will tell some more.
I'm going to tell the
His dogs were always amazing, you know. I saw Uncle Pat at Grandma Anna's retirement home, and the dog was just like, obviously loved him so much, and he loved that dog.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're gonna hear a Magic story.
Okay, so Magic was the epitome of all the pets. Magic, what kind of breed is that?
Border Collie.
Border Collie. Super energetic Border Collie that would fetch whatever you sent until he dropped. I mean, he just would never give up trying to please you, fetching whatever it was. So Pat and his buddy Frank Lateff get on this sailboat that you're talking about, and they're going to sail from Pensacola to Baton Rouge with Magic.
How old was Magic? Because Magic was already 10. He was already an old dog. Yeah. Oh, 5 to 6.
Okay. So that's what I heard until I got a phone call from Pat. And Pat calls me. I'm at the office, and it's too bad our secretary Gail isn't here, because she was here Thursday. But she always knew what was going on. When I was on the phone in my office, she knew what was going on. So Pat calls me, and Pat was in tears. Pat said, "Mike, I killed my dog. The dog, they got in rough seas, and you know they're maneuvering that sailboat, and the dog went overboard, and they could not find the dog. And they were not within. I talked to Frank about this. They were not within sight of land, and the dog was nowhere to be found. And they spent hours looking for the dog, never could find the dog. And Pat called me. He's in tears. Gail is in my doorway. She hears the whole story, and she's a big dog person, so she's all upset and all involved in it and all this. So, you know, I'm trying to be helpful to Pat. I'm on the phone with Pat. He's telling me about this dog. So it was like a month later. What happened was the dog swam to an island, and there was a guy who was fishing on the island. This dog comes swimming up. He takes the dog to the Animal Control Center in Pensacola, and Pat discovers the dog a month later, discovers they have my dog, so he gets the dog. So Pat calls me at the office again. Gail is in my doorway. And, you know, as I'm taking the call, she somehow sensed I was talking to Pat about Magic. And Pat tells me they found Magic, and, you know, we found him, he's okay, everything's fine. I hang up the phone and I look at Gail and I say, the dog is fine. They found Magic. And Gail just bursts into tears. She couldn't take it. It was just the most, you know, heart-wrenching thing to her that the dog was finally safe.
So I'm going to tell you a lesson that my father, my Uncle Mike, although I vague memory, but I know Uncle Jap was a great storyteller too, so I'm sure if he didn't tell me, he would have. And also my dad's best friend, Frank. Although he got the main parts right, Magic fell off a boat, they found Magic, everything else was wrong, but it doesn't matter. Because whoever tells the story, he gets to tell it, and you let him. And it's his story once he starts telling it. And that was a rule in our house. So if he started telling it, it is now his story, and you gotta let it happen. Anyway, I always appreciated that. And other people don't quite understand that. They're like, his story don't have to be real, but just enough real, you know? And that, he did hit it right. Magic did fall off the boat. It was miraculous. It was a long time. It's incredible that he survived and all that stuff, but Dad didn't find him. Me and Colin did it.
And the shortest distance he could have gone was like 3 miles.
3 miles, but
Like, it was probably more than 3, but that was the shortest.
They didn't give you credit then.
Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm Meg, Pat's daughter, and what I remember most about childhood is I'd go to my dad's and we'd be laying in bed and I'd be bored, and And I'd say, Dad, I'm bored. And he'd say, well, you want to go to the store and get a shopper and we can go find a pet? I'd say, yeah, let's do that. And he'd say, okay, go get me a Vivens. Or what was it? Vivarin. Get me a Vivarin. And so I'd go get him a Vivarin. He'd wake up, we'd go get a shopper, and then we'd go find a pet. So we always had pets. Gerbils, guinea pigs, dogs, cats, you name it, we had it. Ferrets, squirrels, everything. But I remember when he taught me how to drive, which I wasn't even sure I should tell this because I just looked up what year that was. I remember it was when the Mall of Louisiana opened that he let me drive from his house on Government to the Mall of Louisiana on Bluebonnet. It opened in 1997 and I was born in 1988. So I was really young and we were driving, I think it was Aunt Sister's car that he had. And we were driving down the road. We were on College and getting ready to get on the interstate and this guy cut us off. And I'm like, oh, I'm scared. And he's like, now speed up, Megan, speed up. And I'm like, why are we speeding up? Why do we need to speed up? I'm going to show you what to do when somebody cuts you off. I'm like, okay. So I speed up and Dad flips him off. I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, it's okay. That's what you do when somebody cuts you off. And then we get to the mall. But I'm like looking back, I'm like, I can't believe. But it felt so normal and just, I learned how to drive and, you know, whatever. And another one, there's a lot of them, but I don't. What?
I was going to tell one. Maybe it'll come back to you.
Okay, go ahead.
Hang up there.
Prunes. That's about me, not Dad.
The other thing he was good at, so yes, he would get very angry and do the stuff, but he was also good at just being like zen about other people being mad. And people, a couple of other people have mentioned it, where he was good at just explaining how everything's gonna be fine. Let me tell you how everything's gonna be fine. It's gonna be good. You know, when my mom found like a homemade bong when I was 13, he was like, "Boy, calm down." You know, I thought it was the end of the world. I never even smoked anything out of it. I didn't even know how to get weed. I just knew there was a thing called a bong. But anyway, and he's like, "It's nothing, boy. Don't worry about it." But we were young. I think it was probably you and Colin, and we were in like some old ratty truck he had, and the two of you said, "Hey, Daddy, why is that man waving at us?" And he looked over, and the guy was like this, and he said, "I think he knows us. Y'all should wave back." Right? And another time, Mom had a high school reunion. A very successful alumni has this big camp in Mississippi with a big lake, and he just invites everyone with four-wheelers and jet skis. And I'm young, and a lot of the kids are older. But I'm gonna get on a jet ski, and I rode, and those other kids were like, "You're done, get off," you know. And I went back moping to Dad. He said, "Boy, go get back on the jet ski and ride. And the next time they tell you to come in, just wave at them." You know? And that's how you kind of handle everything. Don't worry about those people. Okay, so I got one. Dad was a legendary revenge taker. Okay, clever, criminally clever. And this is why a lot of people would seek his advice, legal advice, especially in anything regarding criminal activity, because he was a criminal, right? So some lawyer in Baton Rouge, from Dad's perspective at least, screwed Dad over. You know, whether or not that's true, who knows? But Dad had decided, this guy's my enemy and screw this guy, right? At the time, Dad was really into running. He would, before the sun came up, he'd be running. He was running marathons all the time. He weighed as much as my daughter at the time. He was so damn skinny. Everybody did that in the 80s, right? But anyway, this guy screwed him over. He knew where this guy's office was on Gummit Street, a couple miles down the road from where we lived and on his running route. So he woke up before the sun came up. He put a rag in the left pocket of his jogging shorts and a raw egg in the other one. And when he went to buy that guy's place in the dark, he went to that pipe. He remembered this kind of hanging down from that old building that's up on pillars. He shoved that raw egg in there and stuffed that rag behind it. And every morning, when he would go on his morning jog, he'd stuff another raw egg in there. And he said they spent thousands trying to figure out what the problem was. And eventually, they had to sell that place at a loss. That's it. And he was very proud of himself.
Yeah, there was one when we were kids, and like, I don't even remember it, but we had these neighbors my dad didn't like, and they stole some beer bottles. He was brewing beer. And so his idea to get back, he went out and bought a bag of pot and planted it in their planters. And then once it started to sprout up, he called the cops on them and had them all arrested.
All right, I got a good one. All right, so we grew up in the city, but I was always a country boy at heart, right? And my dad grew up more or less country, even if y'all weren't country, compared to the way I grew up, it might as well have been, right? But he was always a city boy at heart, right? Not real good at that stuff. COVID hits, and he's living on 3 acres over there, and, you know, the store's empty out of meat and everything, and Chelsea's all worried. Well, I have a lot of experience with animals, just never big ones. But all my buddies that I work with out in the country, they all grow up riding horses and raising cows. I figured if Shane and little Daniel could do it, maybe I could do it too, you know? So I told my wife, I said, look, we can go like fight the lions and crazy people to find a few scraps of meat to put in the freezer, or we can go to the sale barn and buy some meat on the pasture, you know, and feed some animals, and down the line we'll have even more meat, you know? Right? So that's what we did. We got some pigs, we got sheep, and eventually Dad and I were like, we need to get a cow. And he has a little cash. I was laid off at the time. I had to keep things tight, but he was like, I'll buy a cow. So we go to the sale barn, and the sale barn is where they sell livestock, right? All that stuff. Me and Dad can't understand a damn word they're saying. And it was hot at the time because of the pandemic. The sale barn, people were just, it was like the incentive money the government gave. Everyone was buying animals and selling animals. It was just wild. Horses and cows throwing dirt on us. Me and Dad were having the time of our lives. We ate cheeseburgers in this old ratty place. We were having a great time. And you know, it all sounded like Chinese, and we're always shocked, you know, and these guys are just throwing little signals, and there's just so many animals. But we're both confused, you know, and the day goes on and on and on, and people who have bought stuff start filtering out, and it's just basically left to us and the professional buyers who have like special chairs. And now they're just buying lots of 100, and occasionally a cow would come out. Well, looking back, I now realize that they all do this for a living, so they could clock what was going on with me and Dad. We were, you know, newbies. We really wanted a cow. We didn't know how to do it. And they must have given a signal to the auctioneer, because at some point he brings out a nice, healthy, young heifer, just weaned, 400 pounds. And he goes, and me and Dad are like this, and everyone stops. No one says anything. And he turns to my dad and said, sir, would you like to bid on this cow? And Dad said, yes. And he said, it's $400. And Dad said, okay, right? So they sold us a cow. Boy, we got a cow. And I had this old trailer that Jarrod had not given me, loaned me, but he never asked for it back. And and at one point he had loaned it to me because I was going to use it for trash for construction. And it was just a standard little single axle trailer, but I had put some 1/2-inch non-treated plywood walls on it, like 4 years before, just to hold in all the construction refuse, right? I wasn't thinking, had no top to it. By the way, if you don't know, 1/2-inch untreated plywood, 4 years sitting outside, it's like, I don't know, construction paper, basically. A child could punch through it. But I'm not thinking, I don't know. It's my first cow. So we pull through the chute where they load the cow up, and this country boy brings it out, and he looks at that little trailer, and he looks at the top of it, and he goes, she might jump out of the top of that thing. I said, you think she will? And he said, she might. And I said, do you think I should put her in there? He said, yeah. I said, okay. So he hooks it up in there, and then Dad and I pull forward. And I'm thinking, you know, I got some wire in the back of my truck. Maybe I'll throw it over the top, and that'll hold her down. So I get out of the truck, and I start to grab at wire, and I see Dad walking by with some hay in his hands. And I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to pet the cow. And I said, Dad, I don't think, and next thing everything starts freeing. That cow saw him coming, lost her mind, and starts kicking holes in that plywood. Next thing you know, Dad and I are trying to hold her in. And Dad, she comes over, and he would always do this when we had like a pig or something get loose. This is how he was there at the end, right? And he thought he could wrestle a pig or a 400-pound cow. That thing's beating him in the face. Next thing you know, she blows through the front of that trailer and she's gone, right? I take off running, and my dad starts to run after me. I said, what are you doing? Go get those cowboys out here to get this cow. We don't know what we're doing, you know? There's a highway right here. She's taking off. I'm chasing around, losing my breath. Apparently at this time, he called my wife to say, we need help. catching this cow. She's an hour and a half away. She doesn't know anything about catching cows. I'm not even sure she knew we were going to get a cow, right? And I think she said, maybe you should go tell someone that works there, which is what I told him. Anyway, I'm chasing. After a while, a couple other people come out, and we all three chasing them. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I mean, this cow's running everywhere. It's insanity. Out of nowhere, a little bitty truck comes tearing around a corner. Like, if you saw it, you would think the same thing I thought at that moment. That's definitely a teenager, right? Teenage boy, because I mean, he's tearing. He spins that truck with the parking brake, leaps out of it while it's still moving like Hollywood with a damn lasso. He catches that back hoof of that cow. She goes down. Then another boy comes around the other corner, big old truck. He leaps out and wrestles her head down. And anyway, we got the cow, and I said, do I have to take it today, or can we leave it here and maybe come get it later? And they said, yeah, we'll hold it until you figure your trailer situation out. Anyway, she was a great cow. She tasted great, too, a couple years later.
Hello, everyone. So this is from Aunt Sally's book. So
Great grandma.
Great grandma Leora. So she had a special place in her heart for Uncle Pat, to me, but Patrick Noble Dooley, and she wrote something about him, and she wrote a song which I don't know how to read, so I'll just read it like a sentence.
Like a poem.
Okay, like a poem. Okay, Patrick Noble Dooley. And it's really cool that she had this picture right here.
Oh my God.
You know, he really liked, I think I saw some pictures in the photo album where he was, you know. So, Patrick Noble Dooley, Pat, as we called him, was born in Helena, Arkansas, the 9th of June, 1952. He grew into such an enjoyable little boy. His grandparent, Majors, always enjoyed his visits. We also enjoyed his letters, which I have saved and I am going to share with you. Some of the letters are written when he and his grandparents lived on a farm in Clinton, Louisiana. On a farm, the others were written while living in Baton Rouge. Dear Grandma, we have a big farm and we have chickens and cows and ducks. We have some cats and one black cat is having babies pretty soon. Daddy owned Runt Chihuahua and her mama Foley had doing fine. We live in a big store and have Cokes and big Cokes and little Cokes. There is one big chicken named Runaway because she always runs away from the barn. Love, Pat. P.S. I am going to school in 2 more months. Dear grandmother and boys, not one of your things were sold yet. One of our chickens got killed by Brenda feeding it rotten corn. I like your letter. I wish I were there. The Heath brothers brought us some butter beans. We made plum jam and strawberry jam. Brenda's arm is better now. Love, Pat. Dear Grandma and Grandpa. Another letter. We have just done Christmas shopping, but not much of it. I bought, guess, Sadie made of rubber. It looks real. We won't be coming to see you this year, so we hope you will be coming to see us. I am going to cook some chocolate cherries, chocolate it seems like, nut mints, divinity, cranks kibbe, I don't know that word, lemon pie, pumpkin pie, Christmas fruit ring, and some cherry almond twists. And I hope I'm making a list of all the things I'm going to buy for it. Love, Pat. Dear grandmother and grandfather, Mike and I really enjoy that concentration game. I thought I was going to say camp. And needed that shirt. including yours. I got 2 shirts. From the Saints, I got chemistry set, and from the Saints, I got a chemistry Santa maybe. From Santa, I got a chemistry set and an overnight bag. From Mama and Papa, I got a shirt, a sweater, and 1 pair of pants, 1 pair of socks, and 1 pair of shoes. From Mike and Jeff, I got a jigsaw puzzle. The whole family got a football and a dart set and darts. That's about all I got, so bye. Love, Pat.
So bye.
I love that. So this is the song that she wrote, but I'm just gonna read it. This is the Pat of 9065. Brown hair, blue eyes, little on the slender side. Watch him blinking those eyes. Better than telling lies. He'll get a girl. Just wait and see. Their magic in his treachery.
Do you still play the fiddle, or is that your?
I don't play violin anymore, but
I do, and I brought my fiddle, but I don't see a melody in here really. Okay. Yeah, see, she's one of those violinists that also sings. So it's very jealous right now. Violinists hate singers. You know why? You probably do because you do both. Wow. Okay, sorry.
I can't figure out the rest, though.
Because violinists walk out on stage with.
Actually, hold on. Can I tell you
Yeah,
a fun
go ahead.
fact real quick?
All right.
Violin mimics the voice.
Oh yeah, I know. My mom always told me that. You're
how it
making
comes
angel
out.
music. Yeah,
How
yeah.
it comes out, it mimics how the voice comes out, which
Yep.
is why it's just as lyrical as the
It's
voice.
very beautiful, but here's how we make that lyrical music.
That's true. That's true.
And you know what singers do?
With my glasses.
Oh, yeah. And then they look everyone in the eye and go, oh, and everyone goes, oh. Also, you want to be good at the violin? Practice 8 hours a day. Singing? Don't sing more than 20 minutes. You'll ruin your voice. Just practice a little tiny bit.
I feel targeted right now.
I know, but you're also a violinist, so I just slapped you like your buddy.
okay.
Sorry.
Oh, we are
Bringing her on the back. Anyway, yeah.
That is kind of cute. It's been a while. Can you sing it for us? Yeah. Yes.
She sings.
I just don't like when she puts me on the spot this one.
I mean, I could get my fiddle and I could play the harmony.
Play it.
And you're going to sing
Yes.
the top line?
Yeah.
All right, someone's got to tell a story in the meantime.
It's in
No
F
problem.
major. Get your fiddle?
While they're searching for their instruments and their nerve,
Right here.
I want to say a little bit about this book. So, Alma Leora Majors Scott, or Scott Majors, was our grandmother. Pat's grandmother, my grandmother. She had the Dooleys, and she had the Polks, and she had the Majors. She was an eccentric lady. Gee, no surprise there. But she made this book, and in this book, there's a tribute to each one of her children, each one of her children's children. And it's really pretty wonderful that we have this. So this is a very, very important book. In addition to, and for each one, there's a song for her daughters, her 2 daughters, her son, and then all of her grandchildren. Pretty crazy. So anyway, that's what this is.
So the Dooleys love it when I do this in front of you Polks because it's like having this is probably an inappropriate way to say it, but this is in popular culture, it's like having a white cornerback. It's like, we got one, right? So, because all you Polks are so damn talented, and I'm not trying to say I'm talented or anything, but I can actually make something happen with this thing. And the Dooleys have always been very proud of me whenever I play in front of you guys.
This is so funny. I think we should go do better than telling lies.
You want to go that?
Watch him blinking eyes better than telling lies.
So you want to go to there? Okay, all right.
Sit here.
Anyway, okay. So, all right.
Just play that
Bottom line? Okay, well, you gave me the easiest thing in the world to do. All right, you gonna give me a breath?
Play the middle, because I think that's just doubling what I sing.
I'll try very hard. Yeah, we don't want to do all
I like this.
I mean, look,
1, 2, 3, go. This is the
okay,
1965.
you're going way too fast. This is handwritten. I can't see it that fast. I need glasses or something. So let me
breathe deeper.
Let me give you
1, 2,
yeah. Don't
3.
bounce.
Okay. I gotta tap something. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the part of 1965. Brown hair and blue eyes, little on slender side. Watch him blinking eyes.
It's hard to read.
Better than telling lies. You'll get a girl, just wait and see.
Where'd it go?
It really just ends randomly.
It's coming in there. Anyway.
You know, I gotta say something about my mother.
She's gonna sing and he's gonna play violin.
Hey, I gotta say something about my mother that brings it up. I still get, here I'm 85 years old, and I still talk to my old high school buddies. Go to the microphone.
And they call me, and everybody, my friends, they don't call me because of me. They call me because of my mother and dad. They had such good memories, and I mean, and I still get the guy that he was the president of Nebraska University. He grew up with me, and he calls and he still thinks about my mother and dad, and I just how mother and dad was such an impact on all of us today, and how they were special.
Amen. Her dad was notorious at being not trustworthy with any kind of weapon of any sort. In fact, when he had that flea market booth in Florida where he sold knives, yep.
You just want to pluck it or you want to flip?
Yep,
Okay.
nope, I'm gonna flip.
Where he sold knives and like throwing stars and pot pipes, he named it Dooley's Knife and Band-Aid Shop, right? And so anyway, but famously, his first incident with a gun was Grandpa took him bird or rabbit hunting or something. He gave Dad a shotgun, and Grandpa had a shotgun, and Grandpa back in that day was wearing a hat, right? And he made the mistake of walking in front of Dad. And my dad, of course, is, World War II out there, behind him, and that gun got jammed, right? And so he stopped and he started messing with that gun and messing with that gun and messing with it, and bam, it went off and it blew Grandpa's hat off the top of his head. And he turned around, boy, and he snatched that gun in his hand. And Dad said, till the day Grandpa died, he never let Dad live it down. He was like, that time he shook my head off my damn head. And when my dad later in life, when he would take us, my dad wasn't a hunter, but he loved being out there and doing that boy stuff. He'd always take us to the pawn shop, buy a beat up old shotgun, then he would take it home and like refinish it. And then we'd just go shoot anything that moved in the woods, which meant, sparrows and a squirrel occasionally. But he never carried a gun. He trusted me and Colin more than he trusted himself with a gun. So has anyone ever seen the Ken Burns Civil War documentary? I'm sure. There's some gray hair in here, so I'm sure some people seen it. Sorry. My dad loved that thing when we were kids. He taped it on PBS. He watched it all the time. And famously, Meg's not out here, but Meg was little. And Dad had it on the TV, and Meg came in the room and said, "Oh, Dad, lay down. You're going to fall asleep watching that." Because he would always watch it and be passed out snoring. That's how he relaxed at night. She thought he'd just fall down asleep, But Jay Ungar is the composer's name. He's a modern composer. He made a fiddle tune for that show. It's been very famous by that show. It's simple. Grandma Anna loved it. Dad loved it. Aunt Julie really loves it. and always makes me play it for her. So I'll see if I can remember it all and play it for y'all. Tough to stick the landing there, but I got it.
One more I played with my sisters with. Y'all want to hear it?
Yes.
What's that story?
I won't remember this one either. Same guy. Step that one
I do. I do. It's one that mom does like all the time, and she's like, oh. I was gonna try to figure out the harmony, but it wasn't working. And
I like this one. So I grew up with my brother. We were very close and did everything together, right? Now, I was the older one, so I was often abusing him and making him do everything, but he did it all, right? And then, you go through life and you meet other buddies and you'll think like, man, this guy's he's a badass. Like, he'll do anything. And then you get to a moment, like, I don't know, a bayou full of alligators and he won't swim across it with you. You know what I mean? And on and on and on. These guys come up, it's like, damn, man, is it everybody a pussy? I'm sorry, I'm going to start. Sissy, that's what I meant to say. So, but my brother, so me and my brother are very different, right? We're just different kind of, I want to get out there, do all kind of crazy stuff. And Colin's content to chill, but Colin ain't a sissy, right? It doesn't matter. He doesn't, if there's no rational reason to be afraid of something, he ain't scared of it. Right? If there's lightning striking all around you, yeah, we're both running. But if someone hears thunder and they get scared, me and my brother are like, why are you scared? You just hear thunder outside, right? He's rational. And I come to this philosophical conclusion that my dad was the reason for that. Because he was always this guy like, you don't worry about that. And he would explain why that's not a rational fear and this one might be, and maybe avoid that. But it was very rational. And one day I was talking to him and I said, me and Colin are so different. But he's not a sissy. I think it's because of you. And my dad said, yeah, everybody thought I was going to kill y'all. But I think I did right by y'all. That was it. And then some years later, my mother, we were on the subject of dad, and she got real, kind of angry about it. She's like, that's why I had to have Meg. She said, because I just knew he was going to kill one or the both of you or all three of you, and I'd be left with nothing. So I needed another damn child. Anyway. And then Dad, if you saw the picture, he promptly put Meg on a moped with me and my brother and rode all over Baton Rouge. But yeah, he was wild.